Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, my name is slicedlime and this is episode 10 of Advanced Map Making Tutorials. I know there's been quite a gap between this episode and the previous one, and I apologize for that. Things have been extremely busy of late. Now it's time though to kick this thing back into action. In the previous two episodes we have been talking about preparing arenas. We built these two mostly empty arenas over there, and then we did a countdown. Today we're going to start out with the game running state here, and we're not going to do much about the game running itself, but what we are going to do is the start of the game, spawning players in, and that deserves its very own discussion. First though, I want to answer a few questions that have come up in the comments for the previous episode. So let's head on over here to our arenas that we have built and take a look. They are not much to behold, are they? They're simply a few blocks just to be there so we can tell the difference. So the first question, and it's a very good question, is from New Yard Gamer. Will you be building the arenas, or are you just going to do the redstone in this tutorial and build off cam? That is a very good question. Now, because these are just empty arenas, we need some form of playing field, and that is a crucial part of making a map, of course. I am not primarily a builder, but I do work with a lot of level design issues. So this tutorial is primarily focused around the mechanics of building a map. But yes, very soon we can take an episode and discuss how to build a good arena, and it depends a lot on what you're doing in that arena, of course. If your map is a parkour map, the arena is going to be very different from if your game is a PvP combat type of game. But in one of the coming few episodes, we'll take a moment and discuss some methods of how to build arenas easily and some of the things that you want to be thinking about when you make your arenas. However, for now, let's get cracking on implementing the game running state. Now, it's been a while, so let's take scoreboard objectives, set display sidebar state, just to see what state the map is in. The map is already in the playing state. If you recall, if we go and look at our states over here, we can see that state 4 is game running. Now, we need another state clock here. Our last clock here is state 3 and entering state 3. So we're going to want another clock like that, and then another entering state clock like this one. So if we set up like this, and then we can simply copy and paste stuff out of here. We want the state to be 4, not 3. Put a sign up here. State 4. And then let's set up, let's see, always active on this, and then we want another one here that is always active but conditional, and this will contain the first command, basically whatever it is that it's going to run on this clock. Now that is less interesting for the moment because we have a whole bunch of setup work to do. So entering state 4 is what we want here, and of course we can copy and paste stuff out of this one. The old state was 3 because we came from the countdown, and the state is now 4. And of course again, always active. And we want another one that is always active and conditional. And of course this will contain our first command. Now if we look over here at the clock that is running all the time when we have our countdown going, we'll see that we are counting down to 1. And then we have a text that says go. And then we set the state. So the first thing that happens is we'll get a go text, but all the players will still be over in the lobby. Now, we have these two things, and one thing that might seem natural to do is to take the entering state 4 line here and just put in here the commands to spread the players out into the arena. let's get rid of this for a moment so we don't have to have that across the screen. Now the problem with just putting that here is that what if somebody disconnected during the countdown? What happens if somebody's been disconnected and then joins back in? You very likely want that person to be added together with their team into the arena. So instead we're going to actually put that on here. This is the clock that runs all the time. And what we're basically going to be doing is we're going to see if the player in question is inside the arena, and if not, we're going to put them in the arena. And of course this will also take care of the very first thing that happens, which is we need to get the players into the arena in the first place. There are a number of ways of doing this. We can do it with area tests and whatnot, but first of all we're just going to use a tag for this. So scoreboard players tag at a remove in arena. So after that, nobody's going to be marked as being in the arena. Alright, now that we've done that, of course we need to tag out who is actually in the arena. To do that, we're going to want to see where our arena is. So let's go over to our lobby, and we have our actual playing field right here. Now if we go to this very corner, this very corner right here, you can take a look. This is block 64 and 24 and 0. And then the arena stretches on towards the positive numbers here. So of course this is the last corner. And that is 127, 24, and 63. So those are the coordinates that we want to be selecting in to make sure if somebody's in the arena. Now basically what that means is from this block 64 and 0, so we can select from 64, 0, 0, and then 64 blocks in X and Z, and 24 blocks up in Y. So let's go on back to our command blocks and implement that. Or jump into the void, that also works. Okay, so in this command block we want scoreboard players tag at a x equals 64, y equals 0, z equals 0, dx equals 64, dy equals 24, dz equals 64, and what we want to do is add the tag in arena. That's quite the selector, but really an easy concept. Now what? Okay, we have a few things we want to do at this point. The first thing we're going to do is remember how in our lobby state we set everybody who was in the lobby to adventure mode to prevent people from griefing and breaking the lobby. We need to revert that now, so game mode survival at a m equals adventure. You can use a number here, you can use the text. I just kind of prefer using the text so it's obvious what you mean when you come back to this later and you've forgotten which number is which. Since we know that players are now in survival mode, we can now figure out what to do with them towards the arena. So basically what we want to do is we want to do a teleport of some description of the players who match a certain selector here. So let's say we do teleport, which we're not going to use, but I'm using it as a placeholder right now. And what we want is at a m equals survival and tag equals not in arena. And then do something with that. So we only want to teleport somebody in survival because otherwise it's going to be painful to work with this map because we're going to be wanting to fly outside of the arena even when the game is running in creative mode. Okay, but what about this teleport? What do we want to do with the players? Well, if all of your arenas have certain locations, let's do that for now and head over to our arenas. So if your arena has a certain like spawning pad for each team, then of course you can use those coordinates and just do a teleport. The problem with using a teleport is that players will end up inside of each other. That's generally fine if you have a spawning pad and stuff, but if you don't, then we're going to have to use something else to figure out where the players can be. So let's say you had this kind of structure always in your maps, then you can put the players. Then you can put your players right here and it would be fine. Now, one thing to note about that is that if you do this, and you have to make sure that players can't grief the area, because if the teams just then did this, and the next round you teleported them inside of these blocks, then everybody would suffocate, and that's probably not a fun way to end the game. However, we're going to assume that the arenas are all different here and that we want to simply place one team in sort of this general area. Maybe a quarter of the size of the arena around this side of the arena, and the opposite team in maybe a quarter of the arena here around the center of the opposite side. So you basically start out in a somewhat random position, but on opposite sides of the arena, and then you get to go at it and try to kill the opponents, because that's what this game is going to be. It's a PvP game. Now, before we get into that, actually let me discuss that for a bit. There have been a lot of questions about this game, what I'm making. I am not at all sure that this game will be all that interesting once we're done making it. But basically I'm just going to do a team deathmatch kind of game in rounds where you get scores for killing off the opponent, and then the round resets and you start over again. But first things first, let's take a look at how we get players into the arena. To do that, we're going to use the spread players command. So if we just type that in, you'll see what that's about. Spread players XZ, spread distance, max range, respect teams, and then players. Ooh boy. Okay, we could do this by just putting in the entire arena inside the X and Z and spread distance, and then turning on the respect teams, but remember what I said about wanting this to work even if a player reconnects. So that doesn't quite work. What we can do, however, is we can do this separately for both teams. So we can do team equals red here, and then put in a spread players command for the red team only. So that's what we're going to do. Spread players X and Z. Now this is supposed to be the center point of the area we spread to, which means that our arena starts at 64 and goes to 127, the 64 blocks. We want 32 blocks onto that to get to the center, which is 96. And for Z, this arena starts at 0. We want a quarter of the arena, which is 16 blocks. So we just move 8 blocks out to get to the center of that. Now we need a spread distance. The spread distance specifies the minimum distance between targets. Doesn't really matter in our case, we can put 0. And the max range. Now the max range specifies the maximum distance on each horizontal axis from the center, so you create a box where players can spawn. Now we want a box that is basically 16 by 16, but we don't want players to spawn on top of the edge of the arena, so we'll put 7 here to avoid that the Z coordinates turns to 0. And then we need a respect teams. That doesn't matter at all right now, because we're only going to be running this on the red team at the moment. Okay, that is the entire spread players command. We're going to put that there and then grab another block here, and we're going to do the same thing but with the blue team. Now of course that means we want different coordinates here, and in general that means that we want to move to the other side of the arena, which is actually 63 blocks away. And then we remove this 8, so we end up at 55. The exact numbers here, of course, don't matter all that much as long as you get the teams into the sort of general opposite areas that you want. And then, of course, this is the clock, so this is going to run the next tick as well. And then all the players are going to get the in-arena tag and then stop teleporting. So to test this, let's go game mode 0. And apparently I end up in the lobby. Okay, some debugging later, I figured out that this said spread player, not spread players. So let's try that out again. And let's see. I end up here on one side of this arena. And if I had been on the other team, I would end up on the opposite side over there. Now, if I just teleport myself away... that is a very interesting glitch. I believe I found something that is fairly broken with your game, Mojang. Let's reload this level and get to the point where we can actually see the arena again. Okay, there we go. But yeah, if I teleport myself out, I'm gonna get the in-arena tag removed from my player and then get teleported back in. So even if you disconnect in the countdown, or the lobby state, then you can reconnect and you will be thrown into the arena in an appropriate place. So okay, now in order to demonstrate this a bit further, we should really try the whole thing from the start. Let's do scoreboard players set at name equals game state 0. Okay, we move into state 0, which means the lobby state, and we're going to do game mode 0 to get myself into the lobby. We see round length, we have those things here all working again, and blue or red team. So let me just join the red team and get my trusty helper into the game. Okay, we have my friend Limeslice here. Let's do a ready check. I am ready. And Limeslice is ready, which means we're preparing the arena and getting ready to go. And here comes the countdown. It's me against you, Limeslice. 3, 2, 1, and go. Now I am on this side of the arena, and obviously way over there, on the opposite side, is Limeslice. Interesting, here we have one of the problems with the copying of the arena, as we discussed a previous episode. Now here's Limeslice. You can see he's not directly at the back of the wall, but he will be somewhere in this general area. Also, a benefit of using the spread players command is that the spread players command will always place you on a solid block and not in lava or something like that. So you can't get spread playered into a situation where you will just instantly die. It will also always place you at the very top of the world, so you can't end up in a cave or something like that. And this is of course very useful in a game such as this one, where we'll be reusing the same arena for more than one round at a time. So that was that for the spawning. Now what we're going to do later on is we're also going to do something similar to perhaps Entrapment or Hunger Games or something like that. We're going to spawn in random loot chests at a random point in the map and let the players scramble towards it. But like I mentioned before, we also want to go ahead and talk level design or arena design, whichever you like. Now there are many builders that are better than me, but I can tell you the principles of what makes a game fun to play in, even if I can't make it maybe look the best. So that's something we'll be looking into in coming episodes, and then of course also we need to count the points, finish the rounds, and all that kind of control mechanisms that make the game a complete game. But that shall be it for now. So thank you very much for watching. I will be happy to hear your questions and comments down in the comments below, and we'll continue the series in the direction that you want to take it. Thank you very much for watching. My name is slicedlime, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.